Hello.
Hey, can you see me all right?
I can see you perfectly. How you doing, sir?
Good, good. Is this uh
Thanks.
is this music in the background bothering you? Can you hear that?
I can barely hear it.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah. So just wanted to let you know, the only way for me to record this is for me to stream it live on YouTube. So technically speaking, somebody could find this live on YouTube, but I haven't promoted it and you haven't promoted it. So
Okay.
we don't have any viewers and I don't plan on promoting it or anything. So,
Okay.
but maybe could you wipe your screen a little bit? It's a little fuzzy. I don't know.
Let me hold on one sec.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
A little better. A little better. That's a little better.
It might just be the lights here. Let me move positions.
Okay.
See if I can there's a light behind me there too. Hold on. Give me uh give me 1 second. I'll find a spot here.
Okay.
That's,
And thanks again for doing this. I appreciate it.
yeah, not a problem. Hang on 1 sec. See if I can turn this TV down.
Next year, and what's your approach? Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think it's like the first time I've ever been outside the top.
Okay. Let's see here. There's still a light. Everywhere there's a light in there. Hang on. How is this right here? Is this all right? Still.
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me,
I think we're good.
hang on 1 sec. Let me give you one more shot.
Okay.
All right. I'll just stand here.
Okay.
Work.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. So yeah, can you just tell me, why was Maryland not in the top 25? And this is going to be like a 5-10 minute interview. I'm just going to use a snippet of it for the sportscast.
Sure.
And once it's posted on YouTube, I'll send it to you. But
Okay.
why didn't you rank Maryland in your top 25?
Well, I didn't intend not to rank them initially. So I've had them ranked most of the year. I had them in the top 5 until last week, and then I had them at 12 a week ago. And I've watched them play against Wisconsin, Minnesota, and as I went through the rankings team by team, I just didn't think they were better. I thought there were 25 teams right now that would beat them. 26 actually. Utah was my 26th team, and that's not all the criteria. There certainly, if I was a Maryland fan, there are qualms with my poll. I would look right at Baylor, which is a team that I don't think their resume is as strong as Maryland, but had been playing a lot better going into Monday. I would look at Providence, which you could argue has a very similar last few weeks to Maryland, and doesn't have a point to the resume, although has a pretty good resume. And so initially I had them on I was going to move them down. When I do the bracket, it's like move up, move down, move in, move out, teams to consider when I do the poll. And it just sort of happened that way. It's a team I've seen them play a lot. It's a team I think right now is fairly dysfunctional. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But yeah, it certainly wasn't my intent to I'm not looking just to make a stir for the purpose of making a stir. And most weeks there's one team. A week ago, Dayton fans were irate that they weren't in the top 25, and they lost twice after that. But of course, they weren't a top 5 team. And it's just a process of it's a combination. You have to find the balance of resume and then how a team is playing. And right now, I don't think Maryland is playing like the teams or better than the teams that are above them.
Tell me more about why you think they're so dysfunctional.
Well, I've thought all year. Now, I saw them playing East Lansing up close, and they played pretty well. I've seen them play really well at times. But I think a big problem is they got almost too many big guys. So, for example, people kept saying, well, Diamond Stone was out for the Minnesota game. And I'm not saying he's not a great player. But that team is almost helped when they're without one more big guy, because Jake Layman belongs at the 4, in my opinion, and they've used him at the 3 all year, and it hasn't been a great season because of it. The ball doesn't always move, and sometimes it stops with Suleiman, who, and I know his assist, statistically he's a decent passer, but it's just not always pretty basketball. And I think that's part of it. They're just a little too big, a little out of position maybe. Their bigs don't always get back defensively. That really hurt them in the Michigan State game. And sometimes things just don't fit. You get teams where the parts just don't completely come together. Maybe they will at some point, because I think from a talent perspective, it's probably the most athletically gifted team in college basketball, if not the most, certainly in the top 3 or 4.
You ranked SMU at number 25, but SMU's strength of schedule is way weaker than Maryland's, and they haven't beat as many top 50 RPI teams. So would you still say that SMU could beat Maryland, hypothetically speaking, at least last week?
Yeah, absolutely. The way the two teams are playing, I mean, SMU had beat Gonzaga, which isn't a great Gonzaga team this year by any stretch, but you can't completely – when you're talking about mid-majors, it's not really fair to compare strength of schedules completely. Like, you could look at Wichita State's a team I'm very high on that's beating a lot of very average teams in the Missouri Valley Conference. And so, you have to balance that. Now, I'll give you an example. Valparaiso is a team I had in the top 25 for a long time until they lost at home, and I was to Wright State, and I took them out. And, Indiana or Purdue would never go to Valparaiso. And that's not Valparaiso's fault. That's Indiana and Purdue not willing to go to a mid-major. You can't punish the mid-major for that. You do have to take that into account. I'm not a huge fan of SMU in terms of the way they play. I think they've been a little overrated most of the year. But right now, the way Maryland played at Minnesota, the way they lost by double digits at home to Wisconsin, I think right now it's safe to say they're not playing like it. Now, the question is the criteria, and certainly their body of work warrants it in comparison and probably over a few of those teams.
So you would say all this even though the University of Maryland is scoring more points against top 50 teams this year than they were last year, and even though again, as you said, they have the more talent, one of the more talented squads that is in this tournament. You would still say that all the top 26 teams that you ranked would beat Maryland on a neutral site
this week. Absolutely. And that's the thing about the poll. It's a fluid thing. I mean, keep in mind, 2 weeks ago, I think I had Maryland at 3 or 4. So 2 weeks ago, I still thought, I'm not doing it for gimmick reasons. I just still thought that they were that good a team. Now, I didn't love everything about watching them play. I've always thought Layman was better as a stretch 4 than he is at the 3. But I thought they were a better team. And then but you watch the way Melo Trimble lost his confidence. You see where they are now. And the other thing about this year's college basketball season, which is tricky, is so I had them at 12, and they fall to maybe 27 in my eyes. That's really not that far a fall. A lot of years it would be. But the difference between the 12th team and the 27th team really isn't that much. A couple weeks ago, I had Duke out of my poll. I think I had them 10 this week. They're just playing a lot better basketball. And a lot of teams have flawed resumes and good wins and bad losses. You can certainly make a good argument that Maryland belongs. Like right now, Maryland's still 10th in the AP poll. That to me is absurd. And I've written some columns on how I think the AP.
I gotta disagree.
I think the AP voters overall just aren't extreme enough. They're either too scared to. They don't. A lot of them don't take enough time because again, we're not paid for this. It's an additional thing you do. A lot of people do it in half an hour. You just go through. Some people have families. And I watch a lot of college hoops, so I see more games than some people. I think Maryland, the way they're playing now, even with their resume, 15 is they shouldn't be any higher than 15 because that's putting them ahead of Indiana and Purdue, who I think are playing better basketball right now and have decent resumes.
2 more questions. Do you think this is the year we see a number 1 lose to a number 16? I mean, the parity, as you mentioned, is I don't remember a year. I mean, I'm only 23, but I don't remember a year where there has been so much parity in any sport, whether it's college basketball or any sport in general. I mean, the difference between number 1 and number 30 isn't that much of a difference.
Yeah, and the reason that one doesn't happen, the 2-15 you do see more, is because the 16 seed usually is a really low major team that upset somebody in a tournament, or there is a gap there. I don't know. The 1-16 is still a big gap. It could happen, but the reason it might not is less about who the one seed is, because I agree the one seeds are weaker. The one seeds probably all would have been 2s a year ago, some maybe even 3s. But the 16 still may have been 16. So the 16's not beating 1 as much about what the 16s are versus 15s. You're right. This is probably a year where it's bound to happen as ever. But I still think it's a long shot because of who usually gets those spots to the 16.
One last question. Just looking for any quote, anything you have just to talk about Maryland looking forward and what they can do to improve in your eyes.
Well, sometimes it just – I covered a team in Michigan State last year that was, I think, maybe even bound for the NIT. They were on the bubble in February, and it came together fast in March, and all of a sudden, and they made the Final Four, and they had a lot less talent than this Maryland team does this year. Last year's Maryland team, less talent than this year's Maryland team. And last year's Maryland team, even though they didn't have a great tournament run, I thought all season really maximized what it could be.
They had less with more. They had less, but they did more with it.
Absolutely.
This year.
It can come together. If Melo Trimble gets his confidence back, we've all seen him play at a high level. All of a sudden it clicks, or they, frankly, if I was coaching that team, and I'm not a Division I college basketball coach, but I would have a bold move where I would only play Layman at the 4, mostly at the 4, because he's such a matchup problem there, and less so at a 3, I think. And so maybe something like that happens. Maybe there's a bold move that sparks him or something like that.
Is he big enough for a 4, though?
What's that?
Is he big enough to play at the 4?
Layman? Jake Layman?
Yeah.
Oh, he played the 4 all last year as a stretch. Absolutely. That's what he, especially in this league. I mean, you look at half the teams in college basketball, they're playing 6'6", 6'7" guys at the 4. Golden State Warriors are playing a 6'7" guy at the 5 most nights. And the way basketball is now, you can do it. And I think he causes more problems when he brings one of your bigs away from the basket and can shoot and drive a 4. He's not more athletic than most 3s. And again, maybe it would work at a 3 if it all was just a perfect, one of those units where it just kind of came together. It hasn't been that way for this year. I still think they're a team. They're one of a dozen or so teams that has a chance because of the talent they have. But when you watch what they've been most of this year, and they've had some great nights, but they also look like a team that's vulnerable in a 3-14, 4-12 first-round matchup, or 5-12.
Whoa, sorry. The lights just went out in here. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me, Graham Couch. I really appreciate it. And hopefully your ranking of them last week is motivation for them to improve, because I don't think there's any Maryland fan who would disagree with you when you say that they just haven't been playing quality basketball. They haven't.
And I really hope they don't need some writers poll that's rather meaningless in Michigan to motivate them. But I appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you so much, sir.
All right, take care.
Have a good day. See you.
You too.